In June 2015, a YouTube channel called Obscure Horror Corner uploaded the first in a series of videos showcasing a mysterious game. The nameless narrator claimed to have found it on the deep web, that hidden portion of the internet not indexed by conventional search engines. The game appeared crude, with simplistic graphics reminiscent of early PlayStation titles. Yet despite its technical limitations, it managed to unsettle viewers through its bizarre imagery, distorted audio, and oppressive atmosphere. The game was called Sad Satan, and over the next month, it would grow into one of the internet's most disturbing legends. Welcome to Vanishing Threads. Today we're exploring the dark corners of internet history to uncover the truth behind Sad Satan, the deep web game that blurred the lines between digital urban legend and something much more sinister. On June 25, 2015, a relatively unknown YouTube gaming channel called Obscure Horror Corner uploaded a video simply titled Deep Web Horror Game. The description was equally sparse. I downloaded this from a deep web link. I don't know the name of it. The footage showed a first-person perspective moving through pitch-black corridors, occasionally illuminated by brief flashes of distorted imagery. The channel's anonymous owner claimed that a viewer had sent them a Tor link, an anonymous browser used to access the deep web, leading to a download of the game. They said they were playing it blind, discovering its horrors in real time alongside their audience. In that first video, viewers watched as the player navigated through oppressively dark hallways. The visuals were deliberately crude, resembling PlayStation 1 era graphics, with low polygon environments and blurry textures. The audio consisted primarily of a low, ambient hum, occasionally interrupted by static bursts and indecipherable whispers. About halfway through, the screen briefly flashed an image of what appeared to be a mugshot, distorted and barely recognizable. The video ended with the player reaching a dead end, turning around, and seeing what looked like a distant, shadowy figure standing motionless in the corridor, though the poor lighting and pixelation made it difficult to be certain. The footage cut to black just as the player began moving toward this figure. What followed was a series of 5 videos documenting their journey through the game. Each installment revealed new, increasingly disturbing content. The second video introduced distorted audio that, when reversed and cleaned up by viewers, contained fragments of speeches, including what sounded like Charles Manson's voice. The third video featured more unsettling imagery, including flashing photographs of controversial public figures who had been involved in high-profile criminal cases. The fourth video was perhaps the most disturbing. It showed the player navigating a section where the walls appeared to be smeared with a dark substance resembling blood. The soundtrack here included what sounded like a child crying, slowed down and heavily processed. Several times throughout this segment, the screen would cut to static, then briefly show images of documents that appeared to be police reports. The fifth and final video showed the player entering a room with what looked like childlike drawings on the walls. The camera movement became erratic, as if the player character was losing control. The video ended with a sustained blast of noise and a rapid succession of flashing images too quick to process consciously. The lack of clear objectives or traditional gameplay elements only added to the game's mystique. There were no enemies to defeat, no puzzles to solve, just an unrelenting descent into a digital nightmare that seemed designed specifically to disturb. As the videos gained popularity, viewers began to analyze every frame, trying to decipher the game's hidden meanings and origins. The channel owners claim that it came from the deep web lent it an air of forbidden knowledge, something that perhaps wasn't meant to be found. The gaming and horror communities quickly became fascinated with Sad Satan. The videos spread across Reddit, 4chan, and various gaming forums. Viewers were both repulsed and intrigued by the game's apparent randomness and the subtle suggestions of something truly sinister lurking beneath its crude surface. What made Sad Satan particularly effective as an internet legend was its ambiguity. The game didn't rely on jump scares or conventional horror tropes. Instead, it created a pervasive sense of wrongness, as if the player was witnessing something they shouldn't be seeing. The game's name itself became the subject of speculation. Some connected it to the Rolling Stones song, "Sympathy for the Devil," which begins with the line, Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste," followed later by references to Satan. Others suggested darker interpretations, noting that some of the imagery in the game appeared to reference controversial criminal cases and disturbing historical events. As interest grew, viewers began demanding that Obscure Horror Corner release the game files so they could experience Sad Satan for themselves. The channel owner initially refused, claiming that the game contained malware and other potentially harmful elements. This refusal only intensified speculation about what the game might truly contain. As with many internet mysteries, it didn't take long for online sleuths to begin investigating Sad Satan's origins. The most comprehensive investigation came from a gaming news site called Kotaku, whose writer Jamie Feltham contacted Obscure Horror Corner directly. The channel owner, who remained anonymous, elaborated on their original story. They claimed they had received the link from a viewer named ZK, who had found it while browsing the deep web. They described how the game crashed frequently and contained files that triggered antivirus warnings, further explaining their reluctance to share it publicly. However, as the investigation continued, inconsistencies began to emerge. Tech-savvy viewers pointed out that many elements in the game appeared to be created using stock assets and basic game development tools. The distorted audio tracks were identified as reversed or slowed down samples from readily available sources. Even the corrupted visual elements seemed deliberately designed rather than the result of actual file corruption. Most damning was the discovery that many of the images flashing throughout the game, supposedly hidden messages or clues, were simply stock photos or screenshots from other media that had been filtered and distorted. Jamie Feltham's investigation eventually led him to contact gaming YouTuber Alias, who specialized in obscure horror games. After reviewing the footage, Alias made a startling discovery. Elements of Sad Satan appeared to be built using the Unity game engine, a popular and accessible development tool, not something one would typically expect from a mysterious deep web creation. On July 12, 2015, less than a month after the first Sad Satan video appeared, a Reddit user named Throwaway59271 came forward with a surprising claim. They had created Sad Satan as a hoax. The user explained that they had built the game using easily accessible tools after being inspired by creepypastas and internet legends about mysterious games. They had then contacted Obscure Horror Corner, a small channel looking to grow its audience, and proposed a collaboration. Together, they crafted the narrative of a mysterious deep web game, knowing it would generate interest and controversy. According to this confession, the entire deep web origin story was fabricated to create mystique around what was, in reality, a crude game made by an amateur developer. The Reddit user even provided early builds of the game to corroborate their claim. However, just as this explanation began to gain traction, another twist emerged. A different version of the game appeared on 4chan's /X paranormal board, claiming to be the real Sad Satan. Unlike the relatively tame version seen in the YouTube videos, this version reportedly contained genuinely illegal content, including explicit images and other disturbing content. This clone version was quickly reported to authorities, and downloading or distributing it became a serious legal issue. The existence of this malicious version muddied the waters significantly, making it difficult to determine which, if any, version was the original Sad Satan. Technical analysis of the available versions of Sad Satan revealed much about how the game was constructed. The version most widely accepted as the original, the one shown in the Obscure Horror Corner videos, was indeed built using the Unity game engine, with many assets that could be found in standard asset libraries. Several game developers and programmers conducted detailed analyses of the gameplay footage, and their findings were quite revealing. The game appeared to be built using Unity 4.5.5, a version that was freely available to anyone in 2015. The textures, while disturbing, were applied using standard shader techniques. The lighting effects, primarily the oppressive darkness punctuated by occasional sources of illumination, were achieved using standard point lights with attenuation settings commonly used in indie horror games of that era. Particularly telling was the corridor architecture. Several Unity developers noted that the hallways appeared to be constructed using Unity's built-in primitive shapes with basic textures applied. The floor plan, a series of right-angle turns and occasional dead ends, would be relatively simple to create even for a beginner developer. The game's code was relatively simple, consisting mainly of corridors, basic lighting effects, and triggers for audio and image files. There was nothing particularly sophisticated about its construction, nothing that would require deep technical knowledge or access to specialized tools only available on the deep web. Computer security experts who analyzed the available files noted that the game lacked the kind of sophisticated encryption or obfuscation you might expect from deep web software designed to conceal illegal content. Instead, they found fairly standard file structures consistent with an amateur Unity project. The audio effects, which were perhaps the game's most unsettling feature, were identified as manipulated versions of reversed excerpts from the Swedish radio show Rättegången, The Trial, slowed down samples from various news reports, distorted portions of speeches by famous figures like Charles Manson and Jim Jones, white noise and ambient sounds processed through standard audio filters, a segment from the Polish composition Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima by Krzysztof Penderecki, music often used in horror films, and processed recordings of children's playground sounds. Audio engineers who examined the sound files noted that the processing techniques were relatively basic, mostly pitch shifting, time stretching, and reverb effects that could be achieved with free audio editing software like Audacity. The images that flashed throughout the game included photos of notorious criminals like Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris, historic photographs that had been filtered and distorted, stock images of abandoned buildings and medical procedures, screenshots from other horror games and films, altered public domain images of historical figures, and court documents and newspaper clippings that had been heavily filtered. Forensic image analysts pointed out that many of these images appeared to be processed using standard filters available in software like Photoshop and GIMP. The distortion effects, pixelation, chromatic aberration, noise were consistent with commonly used digital filters rather than actual corruption or degradation. The player movement and camera behavior were also analyzed. The somewhat jerky camera movement and limited interaction options were consistent with a basic first-person controller in Unity, using standard input settings without much customization. There were no complex gameplay mechanics, enemy AI, inventory systems, or other features that would require advanced programming skills. None of this content was particularly difficult to obtain or would require deep web access. Everything could be found through standard internet searches and modified using consumer-grade software. The technical evidence strongly suggested that Sad Satan was created by someone with basic game development skills rather than an anonymous deep web programmer with sinister intent. To fully understand the Sad Satan phenomenon, it's important to consider the internet landscape of 2015, a transitional period in online culture that created the perfect environment for this kind of legend to flourish. This was a time when YouTube gaming channels were becoming increasingly competitive, driving creators to seek unique content that would stand out from the crowd. Let's Play videos of mainstream games were already oversaturated, leading many smaller channels to explore niche areas like horror games, glitches, and gaming mysteries. Concurrently, there was growing mainstream interest in the deep web and dark web. News outlets regularly published sensationalized stories about these hidden parts of the internet, describing them as digital underworlds where illegal activities flourished beyond the reach of authorities. While the reality was more nuanced, the mystique surrounding Tor networks and .onion sites had entered popular consciousness. 2015 also saw the continued evolution of internet horror storytelling. Creepypastas, short horror stories spread via copy and paste, had already given rise to characters like Slenderman and Jeff the Killer. These stories often blurred the lines between fiction and reality, using techniques like found footage or true story framing devices and references to real-world events to create ambiguity about their origins. The gaming community in particular had embraced horror legends like Ben Drowned, a haunted Legend of Zelda cartridge, and Lavender Town Syndrome, a Pokemon conspiracy theory. These stories often involved supposedly cursed or hacked games that caused disturbing effects on players. Additionally, this period saw increased awareness of internet privacy issues following the Edward Snowden revelations. Discussions about government surveillance, digital security, and hidden networks were commonplace, contributing to an atmosphere of paranoia and fascination with concealed information. The YouTube algorithm of 2015 also played a role. The platform was increasingly promoting content that generated high engagement, and controversial or mysterious videos often triggered extensive comment section debates and response videos, both highly valuable for algorithmic promotion. All these factors created the perfect storm for something like Sad Satan, a supposedly forbidden game from the deep web, documented through mysterious YouTube videos with disturbing content that couldn't be easily verified or debunked. The ambiguity around its origins tapped into existing fears about hidden internet spaces, while its format as a Let's Play series made it accessible to mainstream audiences who would never actually visit the dark web themselves. Following the popularity of the original videos, numerous clone versions of Sad Satan began to appear online. These ranged from faithful recreations of what was seen in the obscure Horror Corner videos to much more extreme versions. Most developers of the clones attempted to recreate the experience shown in the videos without any overly disturbing content, while others created their own interpretations, adding new areas or gameplay elements, expanding on the game and maintaining the oppressive atmosphere of the original. Despite its relatively brief moment in the spotlight, Sad Satan left a lasting impact on internet culture and the horror gaming community. It emerged at a time when deep web horror was becoming a popular subgenre, with many YouTube channels and forums dedicated to exploring the darker corners of the internet. Sad Satan perfectly embodied many common fears about the deep web, that it contained disturbing, harmful content created by anonymous individuals with unclear motives. The game's apparent randomness and lack of conventional gameplay mirrored how many people imagined the deep web itself: chaotic, purposeless, and designed only to disturb. The controversy surrounding Sad Satan also highlighted important ethical questions about horror content and its distribution. How far is too far when creating disturbing experiences? What responsibility do content creators have when presenting potentially harmful material? These questions continue to resonate as independent horror games push boundaries in search of new ways to unsettle their audiences. Sad Satan also demonstrated the power of context in shaping how we experience media. When viewers believed they were watching footage of a mysterious deep web game, everyday assets and stock effects became profoundly unsettling. Once the illusion was broken, those same elements appeared mundane and even amateurish. Today, Sad Satan exists primarily as a cautionary tale about internet legends and the thin line between digital urban myths and actual harmful content. The original Obscure Horror Corner channel eventually disappeared, deleting all of its videos, including the Sad Satan series. However, archives and re-uploads ensure that the footage remains available for those interested in this chapter of internet history. Legal versions of the game, those without harmful content, can still be found in various corners of the internet, kept alive by those fascinated by its place in the evolution of horror gaming. These versions serve as reminders of how effective atmosphere and context can be in creating a sense of dread, even with limited technical resources. The story of Sad Satan also serves as a reminder of how internet phenomena can evolve beyond their creators' intentions. What likely began as a relatively simple hoax designed to generate views and discussion spiraled into something much darker when others began creating truly harmful versions of the game. In the years since Sad Satan's appearance, the concept of deep web horror games has become a recognized subgenre, with many independent developers creating experiences that deliberately evoke the same sense of forbidden knowledge and unsettling ambiguity. Games like I'm Scared, Doki Doki Literature Club, and Petscop all share some DNA with Sad Satan, though they typically avoid the legal and ethical issues that surrounded it. So, what is the true story of Sad Satan? After years of investigation and analysis, the most plausible explanation remains the simplest one. The game was created as a hoax by someone with basic game development skills, likely in collaboration with the obscure Horror Corner channel. The deep web origin story was almost certainly fabricated to create intrigue. The game itself, while effectively unsettling, contained nothing that couldn't be created using standard, publicly available tools and assets. The truly harmful clone versions that appeared later were opportunistic creations by different individuals seeking to exploit the game's notoriety for more malicious purposes. What made Sad Satan effective wasn't technical sophistication or genuinely forbidden content, it was the power of suggestion and context. By framing a relatively simple horror game as a mysterious deep web discovery, its creators tapped into existing fears and fascinations surrounding hidden internet spaces. In that sense, Sad Satan represents a perfect internet legend for the digital age, a creation that blurred the lines between fact and fiction, between genuine danger and manufactured fear. It reminds us how easily context can shape our perception of content, and how the internet's anonymity allows legends to grow and evolve beyond anyone's control. The most disturbing thing about Sad Satan was never what it contained. It was what we feared it might contain, and what some individuals were willing to create in its name. Thanks for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe.